He spent 26 years waking up under a standing death sentence from the Mexican Mafia and somehow kept breathing. He survived stabbings, politics, prison yards, and street traps. But one late afternoon in Chino, a man dressed like a businessman walked up, asked his name, and ended it with a single shot. This is the complete rise, exile, and assassination of Donald "Littleman" Ortiz. He was born in Whittier in 1962, one of those kids who learned the wrong lessons fast and too young. Court files later summarized a messy start. At 11, he and two friends whipped a man with a belt and robbed him of an 8-track tape deck. At 12, he was found huffing solvent fumes inside a stolen Volkswagen. At 13, he pulled a purse at knife point, and months later brawled with cops called to a jack-in-the-box. Each arrest pushed him deeper into the system and closer to boys who would become soldiers. By his early teens, Ortiz had been jumped into Whittier Varrio Locos, a Whittier crew that, across decades, would show up again and again in law enforcement files as a local set orbiting the Mexican Mafia. In recent federal cases, prosecutors said a Quiet Village shot caller, Ronnie Rojas, effectively controlled WVL, reflecting how small Whittier cliques frequently link upward to EM power brokers. That same Quiet Village network was indicted in 2023 after the ambush murders of 2 El Monte police officers. The point: in Whittier, gang politics often flow through M. As a street kid, Ortiz heard the old rules early. Respect your elders, don't talk to cops, and if the EM calls, you answer. He also heard the nicknames that stick. At 5 feet 6 inches, he became Little Man, a handle that would later cause deadly confusion. At 19, he caught a manslaughter conviction, 7 years of which he served 4. Prison taught him 2 truths: survive the politics and never look weak. After that term in 1986, he landed in Men's Central Jail on a gun case, and the door into the Mexican Mafia cracked open. Danny Kojic Davila came through the jail, an EME member from Northeast LA who had fallen out of favor and barely survived an earlier stabbing. According to a former member's account and records reviewed by the Los Angeles Times, 2 M shot callers handed Ortiz a kitchen knife stolen from staff dining and told him to handle it. Hours later, Davila was dead. That murder was Ortiz's ticket to the big table. Formally, Ortiz was inducted into the Mexican Mafia in 1989 while housed at the then-new Pelican Bay State Prison, as the SHU era cemented EM power behind thick doors. Pelican Bay was the crucible. Getting made there meant you'd been vouched for and blooded. Ortiz's sponsor was Daniel Quad Grajeda, a validated EME member whose name appears in prison litigation, and who, like many EME figures, wove prison politics with street revenue streams. But the story of the day Avila hit came back to haunt him. Inside the jails and yards, a rumor hardened into a verdict. Ortiz hadn't personally done the stabbing. Instead, whispers said he'd passed the knife to Tommy, Little Man Moreno, an Echo Park gang member with the same moniker, then took the credit. When cases shook out, Moreno pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and did 11 years, while Ortiz pled to accessory and took 2. In gang politics, being made under false pretenses is a mortal sin. His sponsor, Grajeda, the man who'd vouched for him, turned hard against him. Defectors later told investigators that Grajeda believed Ortiz had also stolen a car and drugs from him. That feud added fuel to a broader smear campaign. And in EM, there's no president or formal rank to appeal to. It's consensus and knives. If enough made men agree you're no good, you're a dead man walking. In 1995, a dozen EME members crowded into a San Gabriel Valley motel room to talk business. One attendee was an informant. Hidden cameras rolled as names were aired and punishments weighed. On that tape, members decided Ortiz should die for disrespecting the organization. David Smilon Gallardo floated a plan: subpoena Ortiz to a courthouse holding cell and have a camarada shank him there. The takedown team got arrested before it launched, but the death order lingered. 2 years later, while Ortiz was back inside for a parole violation, he was beaten and stabbed on a Chino prison yard. Authorities suspected a Greenlight carried from that motel meeting. Staff repeatedly offered protective custody. He refused again and again. Veteran Sheriff Sergeant Richard Valdemar later said Ortiz's refusal earned a grudging respect. He had a lot of balls. but it also meant every yard was a hunting ground. On the street, IME business evolved. Members taxed gangs, drug corners, and scams. Around Whittier, Jose Cartoon Loza, another M figure, surfaced on wiretaps as a street operator collecting for the carceral bosses. In one call cited in federal affidavits, a local gangster wondered if someone was collecting for Ortiz. The answer from MA circles was blunt. Ortiz had fallen out of graces. Anyone claiming to collect for him would be beaten or worse. He was now that most dangerous thing, a persona non grata who still saw himself as a made man. In 2001, Whittier deputies baited a green Honda Accord in an alley. Cameras watched. Ortiz climbed in and muttered, "I'm stealing this motherfucking car." A jury sent him back for 13 years, and he picked up 6 more for jailhouse weapons while awaiting trial. At sentencing, Deputy DA Shelley Barron Torrealba called him the prime suspect in 3 unsolved murders from the 80s and 90s, allegations his lawyer blasted as character assassination. None resulted in charges, but the cloud followed him into every pod and yard. About the name so far, Danny Kojak de Villa, an older fallen-out IME member from Northeast LA, targeted inside Men's Central Jail. His murder was the trigger event in Ortiz's ascent. Tommy Littleman Moreno, Echo Park, pleaded to voluntary manslaughter in the de Villa killing. The twin nickname mix-up undercut Ortiz's legitimacy. Daniel Quade Grajeda, Ortiz's sponsor, later alleged he'd been ripped off by Ortiz and reportedly ordered an attack. Grajeda is documented as a validated IME member in prison litigation. David Smilon Gallardo, among the architects of the 1995 motel plot recorded by FBI cameras. Jose Cartoon Loza, Whittier-based IME figure, convicted in 2020 after a rare trial that exposed Ames Street taxation. Wiretap chatter in his case framed Ortiz as out of graces. Ortiz paroled in 2019, drifting to Chino and, according to local chatter, sniffed around for a way back into relevance. In October that year, he was arrested in Chino for robbing a man of a pistol. He later pled to grand theft. Months after release, cops popped him for public intoxication. The address on the report, a second-floor apartment in the 5100 block of Philadelphia Street. That would become the stage for the final scene. November 19, 2021, 4:30 p.m., Philadelphia Street. Witnesses described a thin man in a blue suit jacket walking up on Ortiz and exchanging a few words. "Are you Donald Ortiz?" he asked. Then came the gun. 9mm round to the head. The shooter calmly walked through an apartment complex and vanished before the perimeter snapped shut and the nearby elementary school went into lockdown. The assassin looked like any ordinary professional, a businessman with a brief job to do. For months, the case stayed quiet. Then in April 2022, Cesar Palomino, 49, was arrested in Las Vegas. Detectives would later testify to a web of evidence: internet searches, Donald Ortiz, Mexican Mafia little man, IME dropouts, geofence data showing a phone traveling from Hesperia down the 15 and 60 to Chino and going dark behind Ortiz's building. Surveillance video tied to a white Infiniti, a black blazer and dress boots resembling the killer's, and Palomino's DNA on the spent casings. In jail calls, a module mate bragged, "I'm here with Snuffy's Primo. You know that dropout, little man? He got him." And Palomino told a relative a line as old as M.A. lore. "They told me, if you eat a butterfly, you become a butterfly." The IME's M logo is often stylized like butterfly wings. Who is Palomino? Records from immigration and criminal cases paint a life ricocheting across the U.S.-Mexico line. Born in Acapulco, raised around Long Beach, Lakewood, and Bellflower, expelled in 11th grade, first busted at 19 for a sawed-off shotgun, joined the Varrio Pobre gang, then cycled through multiple deportations and ultimately a 7-year federal term for illegal re-entry in 2013. He once described himself as a history fanatic who devoured Grisham and Sidney Sheldon paperbacks, an odd, almost gentle detail inside a violent file. Detectives also traced Palomino's line to Manuel Snuffy Quintero, a known MA member. Texts mentioned a car gift from Snuffy. A fellow inmate used the word primo, perhaps cousin, perhaps just our guy. The implication prosecutors sketched at a 2023 hearing was stark. Kill the dropout, earn your way in. Back in Whittier, the streets Ortiz claimed as a kid had changed shape, but not physics. Whittier Varrio Locos remained a familiar name in federal papers, tied by prosecutors to quiet villages' shot callers, who they say leveraged ties for power. That ecosystem explains why a marked man like Ortiz could never truly go civilian. He was either in or he was prey. How did it all begin to end? The rot set in years earlier, the 1995 motel vote, the Chino yard stabbing, and every refusal of protective custody. Even as parole dates came and went, he seemed to insist on living like a made man. He reportedly told officers offering protection, "I can take care of myself." Former IME defector Ramon Mendoza later distilled the fatal psychology. For men like Ortiz, the identity is the oxygen. Lose it and you're nobody. But once you're deemed no good, there is no coming back. The last walk. A woman who'd known Ortiz since 4th grade was at his side that day in Chino. She'd asked him after 50 years apart if he'd left that life behind. She wanted to believe him. She told the court the man in the blazer held a card like a detective, asked if he was Donald Ortiz, then, "We need to talk to you about a homicide." She closed her eyes. She heard shots. When she opened them, she saw the man walking away. Ortiz lay in the gutter, dead at 59. What's allegation versus fact? The murder, arrests, sentences, dates, and addresses above come from records and testimony. The claim that Ortiz handed off the De Avila knife and was made under false pretenses is attributed to a former IME member and reflected in charge outcomes. Moreno's manslaughter versus Ortiz's accessory. The 3 unsolved murders cited at sentencing were allegations that never resulted in charges. The butterfly line and IME membership motive come from sworn prelim testimony and detective interpretation. Why he lasted 26 years? He was careful, stubborn, and, according to cops who hunted his hunters, brave to a fault. He said no to PC and kept stepping onto mainline yards. He tried intermittently to conduct business as if his standing hadn't changed, and that likely sealed his fate. In IME math, identity is earned in blood and can be revoked the same way. In the end, Layem's memory outlasted his luck. On Philadelphia Street, the organization turned a rumor into a sentence, and a sentence into a single clean shot delivered by a man dressed for a meeting. That is how a lifetime of politics ends, quietly in daylight with a practice question. Are you Donald Ortiz?